If you are new to this channel, welcome aboard. I am running through a bunch of video games that I have never played before, mainly because once GTA 6 comes out next year, that's probably the only game that I'll be playing for the rest of my life. And I say that only half sarcastically. There are a lot of video games I still have never played, and I want to get through as many as I can by that time. I may not upload a whole lot on this channel anymore, but for what it's worth in the long run, it is to make sure that I put a lot of effort into these videos to explore one of my favorite pastimes with gaming. Today, I'm diving into Doom: The Dark Ages, the third and latest entry in the legendary run-and-gun first-person shooter franchise. It's brutal, it's loud, it's expansive, and it's very much a Doom game, but it's also got a few cracks in the armor. In this video, I'll be breaking down what works, what doesn't, and why I think this is only a good Doom game, but not necessarily a great one. My journey with the Doom franchise has been very interesting in the last half year or so since I started playing the new modern versions. Doom 2016 felt so much like an out-of-body experience, something so new to me within the first-person shooter genre that I had not felt in a long time, where I was just having so much fun and didn't really let myself be bothered by too much that I could easily have picked apart from it. It didn't really prioritize story all that much and focused more on gameplay, but that can be a great thing if it's done correctly. A great example to compare to this is the Titanfall series of games, more particularly the first game. I only just recently played Titanfall 2 for the first time in the last 2 years, as opposed to when it came out in 2016, so I can't really use that as the example, but the original game I can, because I still think the original is supremely underrated within the genre. Both games came out within the same time, 2 years apart from one another, so in some ways, aside from just being fun on their own merits with gameplay, they share the same tissue for just how closely they came out from each other to give first-person shooter fans 2 years of great fun. And funny enough, I can also say the same for the next two games that came out with Doom Eternal and Titanfall 2. They don't share any similarity as far as how closely they came apart, because now the gap is about 4 years for those two games. However, they do share the similarity of not just being pure gameplay games. They actually put a little bit more focus into their stories. Titanfall 2 actually had a full-fledged campaign, and after playing Doom Eternal, I can definitely see where there was more attention given to the story. Thankfully, that wasn't a net negative for either game. They were both still insanely fun to play and proved themselves to be worthy sequels. And no, I'm not just going to make this entire retrospective a dual commentary about Titanfall and Doom. As fun as that would be to do, that's not the point of what we are here to discuss. I'm sure you are probably all saying to yourself, let's wrap it up with this portion of the video, but I just wanted to get those points across because it helps to give a baseline for where I'm going to be giving the rest of my commentary and analysis for Doom: The Dark Ages. And what better way to now transition into talking about the game with what I believe is the weakest aspect: the story. When it was first announced that this game was going to be a prequel story before the other two games, I was extremely hesitant, and I think my hesitancy towards that news was warranted because, shockingly, for a game that is a lot more story-focused than the other two, I found myself caring a little less for it by the end. The game features the Doomslayer being transported to Argent D'Nur and shows his integration into Argenta society. By the time of the Slayer's emergence, Argent D'Nur and the Sentinels have been at war with Hell for centuries. The current Prince of Hell, an archdemon named Azrak, invades Argent D'Nur with a cunning and devastating force of demons, and you must stop him before Hell is able to take over even more. So on paper, you have an idea for a prequel story that could really interest people. However, when you look back at the first two games, you realize that some of the care you had for that story doesn't really carry forward into the Dark Ages. A story about this giant war between Hell and humans should be a lot more appealing than it sounds, but unfortunately, it doesn't do enough build-up for you. It just throws you right into the action. There is not a second to waste given where the current campaign of the war is between both sides. The Sentinels of Argent D'Nur almost look like they are on their last legs, and Hell is closing in way too fast for you to even have a moment of time to build with the characters, develop them for who they are within the conflict, and also give you an idea as to where it's going to go in the end. In terms of characters, you don't need much development for the Doomslayer because you pretty much got all of that in the first two games, but here you get new characters that for the most part just show up on screen and only serve to make sure that you get to where you need to go. They just feel too much like background noise. The only human character that, in my opinion, gets enough enough for you to want more from her is Commander Thera, the daughter to King Novik, who leads the entire Sentinel force. When she is revealed to us, at first you are given the notion that she'll probably just be a very cliche side character to the conflict, but she's actually given way more to do as the game progresses, and she is shown to have an extremely overpowered aspect to her background that I'll admit I did not see coming at all. I think her character in this game is a perfect example of someone that actually worked for something to care about. You want to learn more about her background, how she got in the fight, and how she came to possess these powers. For the most part, the rest of the game's story is just a little bit lackluster as far as how much you are receiving for the conflict at hand. And speaking of lackluster, the other aspect to this game's story and background that you can learn a lot from that didn't do a good enough job for me is the lore and codex entries. I mentioned this in my 2 videos discussing Doom Eternal and Doom 2016, but I never really found that the codex entries were something that I always had to stop the game for and read. I think the only thing that the codex entries do for players is add an ability for someone to get more invested in a franchise. As a gameplay mechanic, I think it is important to have them there, but you also have to do a good enough job at making me want to stop playing and read them. Thankfully, the entries are short enough in Dark Ages to where you would only take like 30 or so seconds to read them through. The other issue with the codex entries is that they are so incredibly random. Take the ending of the game with the last mission as the best example. In the game, you have codex entries for locations, characters, weapons, and so on. When you find the last character-based codex entry, it is for a character named Marok.
Who?
Who the fuck is that guy? Who the fuck is that?
This is the best time ever to use that meme of the guys in the military who are being backed up by a clown to show that this guy doesn't even belong as far as a character that you should be caring about. This dude, no joke, might have only 2 lines of dialogue the entire game, and yet, character-wise, he gets the last codex entry. It just feels so random and forgettable to make that your last entry to read about in the final big mission of the game. It would have been 100 times better if you made the last character-based entry for the main villain who you were going to fight for a second time with Azarak. This all-powerful demon who through all 3 games is the only boss that you fight more than once in 2 different missions because you couldn't quite get him down the first time. If you make his character the last character-based codex entry, you make it more interesting to want to read more about him before you fight him for the final time. Overall, this stuff is very inconsistent in this game, and I honestly feel it was way better handled in the first 2 games, even if I still contest that the first 2 games don't do the greatest job at making you want to read the lore of these entries. The game is cool enough and fun enough to play where that stuff is ultimately your main focus. And like the past few chapters of this video, that again is another great transition into what it is all that we want to talk about when it comes to these games. The gameplay of the Doom franchise has always been its strong suit. No questions asked. I think even if you asked the hardcore fans what the best part of this franchise is, 10 times out of 10, they will probably tell you it is the gameplay more than the story and other features. That being said, I do find that this is also an area of the Dark Ages that is significantly lacking with what I wanted to see. The gunplay itself with the main weapons has not changed fundamentally, and thank God for that, because I think if they had done things a little differently with the gun gameplay, I probably would have stopped playing. Where my criticism comes from has to do with the melee combat. The last 2 games prioritized a close quarters glory kill style of melee combat, where you can go up to demons and perform animations on them where you brutally kill them in the best ways. Doom the Dark Ages doesn't have any of that anymore, and has now reverted to a much more different system when it comes to actually using melee weapons. You have the Power Gauntlet, the Flail, the Dread Mace, and your trusted shield, of which you can throw back and forth to help kill demons and block incoming attacks. What this gameplay style offers for players is to play a little bit more methodical, but also run with a dual loop of how you can kill. It's basically a shield yourself and shoot back gameplay loop. The amount of times that I did this throughout my run was insane, and I did get used to it over time, but the problem I have with this new gameplay loop is that it feels a lot more generic and simplistic than what Doom I feel needs. The Doom games, in my opinion, should have something that is way more in line with the brutal nature of violence that it brings. Doom the Dark Ages is still a very violent game, don't get me wrong, it's just that I don't feel that there is a lot of weight in how you kill demons in this game as opposed to the the other two games. Even in Doom Eternal, they changed up the gameplay a little bit based off movement, not the combat, and to me, it wasn't a big enough change to where I dreaded it. Over time, as we were getting closer to the end, I kind of just got bored of this game's gameplay loop. There's nothing wholly special about it to where I'm going to be championing it for years as a monumental shift in the franchise. It just feels like they scaled back a little bit when it comes to that stuff, and I didn't particularly like that. But with that being said, everything else is just awesome and so fucking cool. The weapons have never been better, especially with their style of killing, and the demons themselves are all so different enough to where I like that everything was unique there. It didn't matter if it was the smaller scale demons, harder scale ones, or the boss versions. Admittedly, there is a factor of uncanny valley to some of these demons, especially when you look back at all the stuff that you fought in the first two games, so in a way, it does come off odd to play against certain demons that show up in this game with how powerful they are, and yet they just weren't there at all for the other two games. There is no way that I don't do this analysis of the game unless I mentioned the dragon gameplay. Riding a dragon is definitely one of the coolest things this franchise has ever done, and honestly, I would not be shocked if any fan out there tells me that it is the coolest. I like those missions with the dragon, even if at times it got repetitive, but that didn't matter, the cool factor was enough. I also liked that they continued to bring back the secrets, where you would go to these spots on the map to find these miniature toys of characters in the games. That stuff is always cool to be added in a video game, and so I applaud the developers for that. The other aspect of gameplay that I really like with its unique style was the map design, as well as the look of each level when it comes to building out the worlds. I love that this game embraces that ultra medieval vibe with the Sentinels of Argent D'Nur. Just like the weapons, they give the world a sense of character and personality, and I think that's one of the biggest reasons why a lot of people love these games, and they spared no expense in making sure that it looked as great as it does in-game. So what does the future hold now for the Doom franchise? To this point, we are now officially done with my playthrough of the Doom series as far as the modern games goes. I don't personally think that I'm going to go back and play any of the originals back when Doom first started, so I'm sorry if I disappoint any hardcore fans who thought that I would. The ending of Doom: The Dark Ages basically leaves the story open for interpretation as far as other potential things that Doomslayer goes off to do before the 2016 game story starts, where humanity opens up portals to let hell loose on Mars and then go and invade Earth. I don't know if there is any possibility of a story that would take place after Doom Eternal, but what I know about the series is that they need Doomslayer to be there in some way, so I'm not going to act like I'm any smarter than the people over at ID Software who make these games. Just as long as they stick to the core formula of what makes these games good, that is all that I really want. Don't go off and make some stupid live service, extraction shooter, battle royale, or multiplayer only video game that doesn't enhance what you want fans to see from the franchise. Take your time for now and find some way to carve out a good enough story for a future fourth title if you feel it is right to make one. As I just said, that ends off the entire series of the modern games for being fully caught up now, and so I will have to venture off and find another game or franchise of games to explore next. Whatever it is, I am hoping that it can rival the experience that I had playing the modern Doom games, because this has been one of the funnest experiences I've had playing a series of video games in my life. If anybody hasn't played and you're watching this, I don't know what else could possibly be a better recommendation than this video, so get on it now if you can. And there you have it. That is my analysis and commentary of Doom: The Dark Ages. What do you all think? Where does this game rank amongst the 3 modern games for you? Leave your thoughts and comments down below. If you have any suggestions for what series of video games, or if it's a solo video game that I should go into next, let me know, and I'll heavily consider what I can with your recommendations. I only play on Xbox, so that is a parameter for you all as far as what I can play. Thank you all for stopping by my channel. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you are new here, and turn on that notification bell. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day, and I will see you all soon for the next video. This is Orion, signing out.